Good afternoon, everybody. How you doing? We're going to dive right in to some progressions for the kettlebell deadlift. Now, if you saw my video from last week, we talked about some basic progressions on the hip hinge, going from the assessment or the screen into some kneeling progressions, into some body weight, and into some kettlebell deadlifts, etc. Before we dive into these actual hands-on progressions, one of the things I want to talk about is where I'm coming from as a coach. A lot of my clientele are referred to me by local physical therapists, local clinicians that have had back injuries, and whether it's a spondy, whether it's a disc, whether it's a strain, etc. But they come in and they've had back pain. And I think if you've been in this industry long enough, you understand the importance of a good hip hinge. But it's not as easy as just grabbing a kettlebell and saying, hey, we're gonna deadlift. Same thing with kettlebell swings, right? Kettlebell swings are fantastic for the back, but you have to do them right, and you need to make sure that when you are learning how to swing, you develop that slow strength, because when we add speed, it can change everything, and you can actually hide a lot of compensations through speed. So with that being said, we're going to go right into the kettlebell deadlift. Now, I like to start from an elevated posture, okay? So we've got 3 yoga blocks here. You can use whatever you like, but just make sure that whatever you use, you can incrementally drop them down till you get to that end phase for whatever the client may be. It may be the floor. The end phase may just be one block lifting a kettlebell for the rest of their life, okay? So you need to understand that for some people, yes, the goal is a trap bar or a barbell deadlift, but for other people, hey, if you can get them lifting a fairly heavy kettlebell for them off of one yoga block, that may be perfect for them. So you need to understand that every person has different goals and different limits, etc. With that being said, we'll dive in. So we're going to start. I'm going to stack these a little bit differently for you guys, just to make sure it's a little bit easy to work with. That'll work. We'll go nice and easy. So the big thing is the setup. Now the beauty of the kettlebell deadlift is you can get directly over the kettlebell. Okay, so you can keep that kettlebell in your area of base. So we want to focus on hand positioning. Now I want you to think about, here's the cueing that I use. I tell people, take your hands, put them by your side, and push down, okay? We want to bring those shoulders down. We don't want to bring them back, and we obviously don't want to shrug them. So once we can put them down, you can ask them to really reach down with their fingertips, and a lot of the times that gets them to feel their lat. From there, we're just going to bring our hands up front while keeping them down. Place your hands on the kettlebell. Now at this point, hopefully they know how to hinge. So from here, one of the cues that I give them is hip to hip. And what that's going to do is that's going to create a lot of stability in the spine. The lat connects to the thoracolumbar fascia to the opposing side. So actually by utilizing tension in the lat, it is going to help stabilize the lumbar spine. So we're going to focus on hip to hip. We're going to come back, boom. Next thing we're going to focus on is grip, okay? The harder you can grip, you're going to create some more stability in the shoulder, and overall it's just going to be a better way to deadlift. And then lastly, we're going to talk about neck position. Now there's been talk about, should you pack your neck, should you use extension, whatever. Here's the key, if you don't know why you're using either position, you should just probably stay neutral. Some people will say go into extension, some people will say pack your neck. Listen, if you're just doing it because you read someone's blog and someone said, hey, packing your neck's good, or someone said that hyperextending your neck is good, that's not a good reason to make that decision. So I encourage you to dig a little bit deeper and find the principles behind it if you're going to really argue about neck position, okay? For now, we're going to stay neutral. Okay, we're going to hip hinge back. We're going to grasp, we're going to go pit to hip. We're going to bring in air through the nose. Let the air out, okay? At the very, very top, we're going to maintain intra-abdominal pressure, okay? We want the glutes to be nice and tight. We want the abs to be nice and tight. Both of these things have to create some balance. And what I mean by balance is if you have too much clenching of the glutes and not enough sort of pressure or stability on the front side, a couple things might happen. One is you may actually go into too much of a posterior tilt, and that may not work so well. Okay, the other thing that might happen is if you use too much glute and you push too much forward, you could slip into hyperextension. So make sure that there's a balance between how much tension you use on the backside with your glutes and how much tension is on the front side to keep you nice and upright. And from there, guys, we're just going to work on breathing, grip, cueing, yada, 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 okay? Now, at this position, because it's so high, it's really easy to just get a groove, right? We don't have to really worry about weight distribution too much. Yeah, we have to know where to be, but you know, it's a very, very short pull. Now, as we get lower, we go to 2 blocks, maintain the same positioning, okay? So on and so forth. Go through that same progression. Talk about grip, neutral neck, pit to hip, breathing, yada, yada, yada. Now, once we get a little bit lower, that's where we have to coach more, right? So it's a longer pull. And I would argue that the setup on the deadlift is probably the position where people need to work on most, okay? Because that is where things come off the tracks a little bit, right? Maybe they lose their pelvic position or they don't know how to create pressure, etc. So one of the things that I like to really focus on is understanding where to distribute the weight in the deadlift. If we're too far in the toes, we're gonna fall forward. If we're too far into the heels, we're gonna pull that wheelie and have to take a step back. So what I'll do is have them cue the bottom position, and I'll just say to them, okay, bring your weight into your toes, fall forward a little bit. You're gonna notice that when my weight comes too far forward and I have an anterior weight shift, a couple things are gonna happen. I'm gonna have to actually catch my balance. I'm gonna do that by pressing my big toes into the ground. And if you've ever deadlifted, this is the opposite of a posterior weight shift. This is an anterior weight shift. It's gonna be really hard to deadlift correctly. So from there, I'll say, okay, good. Now I want you to go all the way into your heels. And you're gonna see this is gonna end up happening. Now we're gonna find the middle. And what I like to encourage them to do is put a footprint into the ground, right? I want you to plant your feet into the ground. And once they find that, we go through that same position, but they're not here, and obviously they're not too far back. They set up, brace, and then stand up, boom, and put back down. Now, at this point, you're gonna start making the decision whether or not you want to progress to the ground or whether or not you want to add some more weight with a yoga block or whatever you decide to elevate with. So it's really up to you as a coach as what you find to be the appropriate progression. One of the things that I like to cue in the deadlift early on, especially if in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, hey, I'm going to have these people do swings. All right, so if we are going to have them eventually get to kettlebell swings, we need to teach them about speed and how to bring the hips through in a little bit more of an accelerated pattern, right? So I talk about having 2 gears, and what I mean by that is when you break the kettlebell off the ground, okay, you want to be nice and slow. You want to take the tension out of the cables. An analogy that I use is think of a crane, and when a crane lifts an object up. Right, if a crane is going to lift a heavy object up, we're going to take all the slack out of the cables before we pull. And that's the same thing we want to do in a deadlift. We want to take the slack out before we pull. So what I'll cue to them is on the deadlift, and I'll face you guys, is we want all the slack taken out. Now, once your fists clear your knees, we bring the hips through, okay? Now, hopefully at this point, when they bring their hips through a little bit faster and they hit that second gear, they understand the tall plank position. So it's gonna look like this, and I'm gonna be facing you so you guys can see me, but here's your first gear, second gear. First gear, second gear, okay? So all it's going to do is, it really allows you to bridge the gap from a regular deadlift into a swing because we are adding the speed component. So that's a very, very simple way to teach them about accelerating the kettlebell, but obviously not getting to the point where they have to dive into a full swing. And then lastly, there's a couple different ways you can go from here. One, you could go to double kettlebell work, or two, I mean, we've got kettlebells up to 150 pounds, so what we do actually at our gym is we ask them to show us a 60-kilo deadlift for 5 repetitions before we go to the barbell, if that is an appropriate path for them. And let me tell you, it works. They understand tension, they understand the mechanics, and when we do switch them over to a barbell, they know exactly what to do. So if you don't have those types of systems in place, or you don't have a system, I would highly recommend you put something together that works for you and your clientele. And as far as the double kettlebell progression goes, it's really up to you. You can start by elevating, or you can start from the floor. I will say this, if you decide to do double kettlebell deadlifts, it doesn't hurt to elevate them. They show you 2 sets of 5, and it's easy. And then you drop it down, 2 sets of 5. Maybe that'll take 4 to 5 minutes, but really what it's allowing you to do is to check your work and to make sure that you're not skipping things, because hopefully as a coach you believe in smart progressions, and what you want to do is make sure that you're not backtracking. You want to make sure that when you're progressing people, you're actually progressing them. You're not going, yeah, well, oh man, we shouldn't have done that. That was too advanced. Let's drop step and let's move backwards a little bit. So when in doubt, if you feel like, hey, we want to introduce a double kettlebell deadlift, throw them on some blocks, take them down, do a couple sets of 5, and then bring them to the floor, and then go from there. Lastly, a nice way that you can work on the double kettlebell deadlift is obviously you're going to do basically a double overhand grip. You can find the comfortable positioning for them, but just remember, if you do decide you want to internally rotate or pronate or add a little bit of supination to the positioning, that's fine. But if your goal is to go to a barbell, keep them straight across. With 2 kettlebells, you have to find a wider position. And just to make sure that when you're going into this wide position, the biggest mistakes I see is going very wide and feet straight. That is a recipe for dinging up your hip. It's not a good idea. In general, the wider you go, the more you have to externally rotate to really help match sort of the anatomy of the hip. Now, everyone's different, but in general, that's a fairly decent cue. So for me, I like to be about here. I'll point the toes out. These are going to track about that 4th toe. I'm going to go down in that position. It's the same thing. Shoulders down, pit to hip, set the hips, boom, and bring the hips through. Very, very simple progression. Common mistakes on the double kettlebell deadlift, it is the neck thing, right? So what I see a lot of is at the bottom of a deadlift or swing is we go into this hyperextended position. And at the very top, to create a little bit more stability, we tuck the chin. All right, so say that's a habit of yours and you don't clean that up when it's time to do swings. You do 300-400 swings in a session, maybe you do a 10,000 swing challenge or whatever, you're doing that 10,000 times, and how is that going to feel on your neck, right? So just think about kind of the long-term implications of how you're moving a belt. So very, very simple progression, guys, but I encourage you to take it step by step and use common sense. And just remember, it's not about the kettlebell, it's how you move the kettlebell. And everyone's swing's going to look different, everyone's hinge is going to look different, and we can't put everybody in the same box, okay? A 5'2" person is not going to look identical to a 6'2" person. It's just not going to happen, okay? Same thing with foot position. Same thing with squatting. I may tell people I need you to do, hinge a little bit more on your squat. I may tell someone on their squat they need to, on their hinge they need to squat more. It really depends on the person and their mechanics. So make sure that you're giving that cue to that person for them at their specific time in their training. Now that may change over time, but there are some universal cues that work, but at the same time, a good coach will give specific cues to specific clients to allow their progress. So thank you guys, have a good day.
What's up, Coach?
What's up? Coach Raph just totally photo bombed me. Look at this guy. Come say hi, Raph. Raph, let's talk. Come have a sit. Have a seat. Have a seat. We're on TV.
I'm gonna be famous like Coach Peck.
You're not famous. So this one time I tapped Raph out. Nah, no I didn't. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, and then
kettlebells.
And then he woke up.
I did. That would never happen.
Kettlebells. If you wanna have a good leg drag, you need to do kettlebells.
That's it. But for what else? I mean, you've been training with the bells for a while. How has it helped your game? Seriously.
Mainly kept me out of injuries. I think it keeps me as healthy as
as you can be.
I can be with what I do. So yeah.
So
game changer.
Raph uses them a lot. He's a ninja. He's a black belt ninja. Look at that beard.
That's what I do.
I see his beard and his hair, and I just get a little. I feel bad for myself.
I'm a beard black belt.
He's a beard black belt, and
yeah,
I just
have a black belt.
after this I'm gonna cry because I don't have the locks of this man or the jiu-jitsu skill. So, Raph just photobombed us, or is that? That's not really a photobomb because it's a Facebook Live bomb.
It's a video bomb.
Do you want to? So hey, tell them about your gym, guys. I train at Phoenix BJJ in Lowell. Tell them about your spot. Give them a little plug here. This guy's
Jiu-Jitsu's changed my life, and this guy has been instrumental in my development. So I'd highly recommend you check out Phoenix BJJ, but give your place some love, man.
My place is awesome, first of all. A lot of, how do you call it, camaraderie?
We got some good teammates, man.
A lot of good teammates, a lot of camaraderie. What did you write on the board that day?
Community over competition.
Community over competition. That's our modus of operation, yes. Community over competition.
Yeah, there's not too many places where you can go to try to choke each other out and break each other's arm, and then after you're sitting there trying to help each other out and figure out how to do it better or how to defend it. So it's fun.
Try to keep the egos outside. We just train hard, have fun, and that's it. That's my place. There's no better way of knowing it than coming over and checking it out.
Yeah, guys. Honestly, if you're interested in jiu-jitsu and you're in the Lowell area, Chelmsford area, you can hit me up or check out Phoenix BJJ, because these guys are
ninjas.
awesome.
We're ninjas.
Ninjas. Well, he's
gonna
ninja.
go work out.
He's gonna go do some stuff.
Thanks, guys.